Hi everyone, welcome back to our Linux Beginner to Pro series, and today is our day 6. Today we will focus on regular file permissions, and in the next part we'll be talking about the special permissions. When I say file permission, it also applies on the directories. Let us understand how does the permission matters in case of file and how does it differ in the case of directory. There are total three types of permissions. If we talk about files and directories in Linux, it is read, write, and execute. As you all know, file is like a blank page where some text is written, whereas directory is kind of a container where we can keep multiple files and then subdirectories. If we try to read a file, that means we are trying to read the content written on it or the text written on it or data written on it. And if we try to write it, that means if I try to modify it, I'll be modifying the text written on it or the data on it. And when we talk about the execute permission of a file, it is applicable on the files which are executable, for example the package files and script files. In case of directory, when you talk about the read permission of a directory, we basically get the permission to list out what all the components are there in the directory. And if we talk about the write permission on the directory, we do not have any text written on it exactly, but we have some files and directories inside the directory. So when we say we can write a directory, that means either we can create a file or directory inside, or we can rename, move, and delete the existing files and directories. This is the meaning of write permission on the directory. Now when we talk about execute permission on directory, it basically means that we can open the directory or we can cd to the directory. That is all is the meaning of execute permission with respect to directories. Now let us see how do we check the permissions on the system and how do we modify them. Let me make a directory in the slash called practice. Notice that I have logged in with root user to the system and I am in the slash root directory right now. That's the home directory of root user. This curly bar represents that I am in this user's home directory. Moving on, if you run ls-l in a directory, it will be long listing the component of the directory. If I do ls-l, I don't see anything here. If I create a file here, let's say file1, and do ls-l once again, this section represents the permissions on this file. Or similarly, if you do ls-l slash, you'll be able to see the permissions of this directory and the permission of this file. The first component shows that this is a directory. If it is empty, it shows that it's a file. Next 9 characters are dedicated for permission representation. First 3 permissions, that is RWX, are reserved for the user owner. Whenever we create a new file, the user who has created the file will become the default owner of the file and its primary group will become the group owner. So whatever members are there in that group will get the same permission as the group automatically. Second permission is for the groups, group owner. And the last one is for others, everyone else apart from the user owner and the group owner, everyone else is the other user. Whenever you see a hyphen, that means this permission is not assigned to this file. It's not for a particular user, it can be changed on this particular file This is the permission. Every file and every directory has its own independent permission and they work on their own permissions. There is no dependency of someone else's permission to some other file or directory. Since this directory practice has been created by root, you can see the root is the default owner user as well as root group is the default owner group. If I switch to Tom and try to go to cd/practice, Tom is the other user here because he is neither root nor a member of root group. And others are having read and execute permissions. That means if a user logs into the system, he will be able to switch to this directory and even will be able to list out the files and directories. But if he wants to create a file here, he cannot because this user doesn't have the right permission. These permissions will always be in sequence of RWX. If anything is missing, it directly means that we do not have that permission. Let me exit from here, become root once again, and now I want to give permission to the Tom and Harry users so that they could go to the practice directory and create a file over there. First, I will check what are the group membership of Jack and Tom are there. Both are having one thing in common, that's American group. Let me do one thing. I will be changing the group ownership to American for the directory practice. chgrp command will change the group ownership of this directory to American. Pressing enter, ls-l/, I see the group owner is American. By this, Jack and Tom users will be getting whatever permissions is there in this section. Now here also we do not have the right permission. If we want to assign the right permission, we have the command called chmod to change the permission. chgrp for group owner and chown for the user owner. And for changing the existing permissions, we use chmod command. Now we want to give right permission to the group. You can write like this alphabetically, or I will teach you about octal values later in this video. G plus W and practice instead /practice because I am not in the relative path right now. Now if I do ls-l/ once again, you can see now the group members are having right permission. Now if I switch to Tom after giving the right permission to the American group, I can list out what all the files and directories are there and try to create a new file here, that is touch file2. Right now I am able to create a file here. You can see Tom is the user owner and American is the group owner. Similar thing I will also try with Jack. If Jack is able to create a file here, touch file3 and ls-l, yes, he is. Now we understood that if we have the right permission on directory, we can create a file. Let me say if we can rename, move or delete any file in this directory. Let me try to rename Tom's file. I am logged in as Jack. MV file2 to new file. Yes, Jack could do it. Similarly, he'll be able to rename the roots file also. Now let us see whether he can delete others files. rm-f space file1. This file is owned by root. Let us see if we can delete it or not. Yes, with Jack user we could delete the file1 also. So we understood that if we have the right permission either through the ownership or through the group membership, we can delete, we can create a new file, we can rename or move the existing files. Do I have the ability to edit the new file? I could rename it, accept it. Now let's see if I can edit it. Cat single greater than new file. It says permission denied. Why so? Because we do not have the right permission on the new file. Now when we talk about editing the file, it's not about the directory permissions anymore. Directory permissions is limited to create, move, rename and delete. When it comes to edit the file, it is completely dependent on the right permission on file itself. So as we can see, only the owner Tom has read and write permission, but American group does not have read and write permission. User Jack cannot edit the new file. If we want, we can give the right permission to American group, or we can also give to the others. But what it will do? It will make the file available for edit to everyone. That is not acceptable into the industries. We should not be giving write or execute permissions by default to the others. This is complete security breach and it can harm the file. It can put threat against the file. We must be giving the permissions to either the user owner or the group members, since that is controllable. If we give the permission to others, it goes to everyone on the system and it cannot be controlled or defined. Let me talk about numerical value or octal value of the permissions. Read is equal to 4. W or write is equal to 2 and execute is equal to 1. This is the default value assigned to these permissions into the Linux systems. You can remember this. This will be applicable throughout the Linux flavors. R is equal to 4, W is equal to 2, X is equal to 1. Where is 3? Let's say if we assign R is equal to 3 and if we give the permission 375 or something like that, the system will be confused whether I need to give W plus X or just read permission. So that is why they skipped number 3 and gave 4 to read permission. Now let's see how does it work. If we want to change the permission of this file, new file, hold on, I need to log out and go to root first to change the permission, or I need to be the owner of the file to change the permission. These are the two conditions. Either root or the owner of the file can change the file permissions. Now chmod, what is the permission right now for this? Let me calculate this. If we want to add write permission on the American group, what we will have to do is let the existing permission same as earlier and add the permission. Now if I make RW, it will change to 6 and others permission will remain as 4. Now write the file name, new file, press enter and do ls-l. Now you can see write permission has been assigned to the group also. Now if I switch to Jack and try to edit the file this time, cat new file. I'm not the owner, but I'm the member of the group which is having read and write permission. I got the access to edit the file. I can add this line was added by Jack. Press enter. Last line has to be empty. Control C. Cat new file I can see the line has been added because we got the right permission through the group. Or we can directly change the ownership. That too will have to be done with root chown. Let me make Jack as the owner of new file. Jack is the owner of new file. If we want, we can revoke the group permission from American group. Either we have to do chmod g -w new file, or if we want to do it into the numerical way, we should change it to 644 back. Now it is having the 644 permission. Now write permission has been removed from the group. I believe this was clear about the files and directories. How does it work on a file, or how does it work on a directory for users and groups and others. We also understood how do we change the permissions, ownership or group ownership, and in the alphabetical way and in octal way. If you have any questions so far, please write into the comment box. Moving on, how does the system knows that what permissions has to be assigned to a file or directory? There is a parameter on the system called Umask. If you run the Umask command, it will be showing you what is the current Umask value. Right now, the Umask value is 0022. For the directories, it calculates by subtracting the Umask value, ignore the first 0, from 777, and that stands for 755. Similarly, for file, it subtracts from 666 minus Umask value, and we get the default permission for files. Why is it subtracting from 666 from the files? Because there is no file that should have execute permission by default. We should not be assigning execute permission to the files by default, because it can have a security breach. If it is an executable script, they have copied to your system, and if it is getting the execute permission by default, it will execute on your system and it may corrupt the data, it may corrupt your system itself. For security, we do not assign a single file execute permission by default. If we change the umask, you can change it like this. Let me change it to 002, and let's see what is the impact now. Touch file 4, touch directory 1, ls-l. I can see on the file 4 what is the permission. It's by default 664, and the directory 1 got 775. Ideally it gets 755 if the umask value was 0022. Since I changed it to 002, now the permissions are coming differently. The umask is the parameter which defines the default parameter on a file and directory as soon as they get created. This is all about the regular file permissions. If you like this content, please like our video, share it to your friends who may need to learn Linux, and subscribe to our channel if you have not done it yet. Thank you so much.